Today we'll be talking about conductors and how they're used in everyday household appliances. A conductor is an object that allows electrons to flow freely throughout it, and then an object made of conducting material will permit charge to be transferred across the entire surface of the object, hence why the entire stove and pan, when you're heating it, becomes hot. This is due to the fact that conductors allow for electrons to be transported from particle to particle, and thus the stove distributes its charge until the overall repulsive forces between the electrons is minimized. The process of conduction is used to cook foods on the stove, and metals are great conductors, and in our case, the stove and pans we use to cook are both made of metals, so they are great conductors. When you turn on your stove, an electric current begins to flow through the coil. You can come in, flow through the coil of the stove, and then as the electrical energy is carried down the wire by the electrons, since electrons are the charges that flow, they are jostled around and collide with one another, giving off heat in the process. The more collisions that occur, the more heat that is generated, and if enough heat is generated, then the coil can turn red hot, which is when you see it turn red. And then a way to produce more heat is by having a thinner wire or more current, because these have increased the number of collisions that happen while the current is moving through the wire. Also, conductors have a low electrical resistance, thus the thinner the wire, the harder the current has to work to pass through it, and the more heat is produced. The heat in the coil then transfers to the pan, thus because they're touching, and then the electrons in the pan begin being jostled and heat up as well. Lastly, the electrons in the pan are transferred to the food you're cooking, which jostles the electrons in your food, and your food is cooked. Hence, like when you put butter in a hot pan, it begins to melt because the electrons in the butter are being heated up, and then they melt. Another application of conductors is with toasters. Electrical energy flows from the outlet into the toaster. This current then flows through a series of thin filaments. The filaments are thin enough so that a lot of heat is generated to the point where they glow red as the electricity flows through them. And the filament then transfers their heat to the bread and makes a toast. As you can see in this toaster, the filaments are really red because they're producing so much heat that they turn red. Lastly, another concept of conductors is with our lights. Heat is not the only thing that is produced when electricity flows through a conductor, which is how we get our light. The filament in lights are incredibly thin pieces of coiled wires which become extremely hot as the current flows through them, since they are so thin, and that was one of our ways of making the current work harder and produce more heat. Eventually it produces so much heat that it glows white hot and gives off light in addition to heat.